Hi, this is Sean Henricksen here from the Sean Henricksen Law Firm, where we help good people like you avoid the devastating consequences of criminal charges. Today we're going to be talking about DWIs and how most DWIs happen between 1 o'clock and 2 o'clock on Fridays and Saturdays. Before we get to that, we do have a free download for you. It's 5 things you should be doing right now if you've been arrested. If you click down in the description below, there's a link there and we'll send that right out to you. DWIs happen at all times of the day and in lots of different situations. But one thing that I've found is that the vast majority of cases have a very similar fact pattern to them. They happen around 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning on a Friday or Saturday night, and there's an officer on the highway who pulls somebody over for speeding or failure to maintain a single lane or for some other traffic violation. And one of the first things the officer is going to ask you is where you are coming from and where you're going to. And most people are going to say at that time that they're coming from a bar, they're coming from a club, or coming from a friend's house or something like that. And the officer is going to ask you if you've had anything to drink. Most people end up saying either sometimes they'll deny it or sometimes they'll say they had a beer or two. And the officer is going to say that he smelled alcohol on your breath. From there, he's going to get you out of the vehicle. He's going to do some field sobriety tests, and there's a good chance that that person's going to be arrested for DWI. So what do you do if you're in that situation? Let's say that you do find yourself coming home from a bar or a club or a friend's house, or just driving down a highway at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and an officer decides to pull you over. So my first piece of advice is if you are going out, going drinking or going to a bar or anything like that, if you've been drinking at all, the best thing obviously to do is going to be to call an Uber or to have a friend drive you home. It's perfectly legal to have a drink and then drive as long as you're not intoxicated. But the problem is once you've had a few drinks in you, it can be hard to tell whether or not you're intoxicated. For me, when I get pulled over for speeding, if I'm in that situation, I'm usually just going to be nice to the cop, answer his questions, and hope that I get a warning. But if you're driving at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning on a Friday or Saturday night, then I think immediately you've got to be kind of on the defensive and assume that this cop is looking for things that's going to lead to a DWI arrest. And so whether you've been drinking or not, I wouldn't answer those questions that the cop asks you. First off, remember, you've got the constitutional right to remain silent, and you never have to answer an officer's question. So if he tells you that he just wants to check you out, he just wants to make sure you're all right to drive, remember, it's not your job to have to prove to an officer that you're okay to drive. They're the ones that have to be able to show that they've got probable cause to arrest you for driving while intoxicated or whatever else they're trying to arrest you for. The burden is on them to show that you are driving while intoxicated. It's not on you to prove that you're not driving while intoxicated. So because of that, my recommendation is not to answer those questions that the officer is going to ask you about where you're going to or where you've been. Don't answer questions about whether or not you've had anything to drink. Don't lie in the situation either, because if something does, let's say you do end up getting arrested and that case does end up going to trial, we don't want you on video lying about where you've been and saying you've had nothing to drink when later on there's a blood result or a breath test that shows that you were drinking. We want you to maintain that credibility that you have. I also recommend that you demand to talk with an attorney if you're in that situation, because once you demand to talk with an attorney, then we've got a better chance of keeping out any statements you make after that, whether it's you saying you don't want to talk to the officer or anything else that you say or slurring language. Any of that, we want to be able to keep that out. And if you demand to speak with an attorney, we've got a better chance of doing that for you. After the officer has asked those initial questions, they may ask you a lot of other questions too about when was the last time you ate, when was the last time you drank, when did you start drinking, how much did you drink, what was it you were drinking. They may ask a lot of different types of questions, but don't answer any of those. That officer at that point is just trying to make a stronger case against you, and you answering that questions doesn't help you out. After the officer asks you those questions, they're going to pull you out of the car and ask you to do field sobriety tests. Sometimes they're going to let you know that they are performing tests and ask you for your permission on whether or not you want to perform those tests. And sometimes they'll just jump straight into it, usually with an eye test where they're having you follow a pin with your eyes. If that happens, tell the officer you don't want to do the field sobriety test, that you're refusing to do those. They can still use that against you when making the decision about whether or not to arrest you. But most people, or a lot of people, are going to have trouble with those field sobriety tests, especially if you're older, if you have balance issues, if you've got any issues with your joints or anything else. There's so many reasons aside from being intoxicated that you could do poorly on those tests. And so my recommendation is not to do those tests. If you do follow these recommendations, that you don't answer the officer's questions, that you don't do the field sobriety tests, then there's still the chance that you're going to get arrested. You may not be able to beat that part, but what it's going to do is it means the state's not going to have quite as good of a case against you if they do end up arresting you and charging you. And you may not get arrested at all if the officer doesn't have probable cause to believe that you were driving while intoxicated. If you're being charged with DWI or any other crime in San Antonio, schedule a free consultation. That way we can go over your case with you. We can answer your questions and let you know what to expect and let you know how we may be able to help you out. You can use the link down in the description below and schedule that free consultation without having to make a call at all. Or you can give us a call at 210-942-4997. I hope you have a great day.